I'm delighted now to introduce Roberto Viola, whom you know very well, Director General of DG Connect, who will talk about the Digital Decade program. Thank you very much, Roberto, for being with us.
My pleasure. I hope you can see and hear me well. It's really a pleasure to be with you, although virtually in the Stakeholder Forum. You were so kind to invite me in the past, and you have repeated the invitation. So in a way, I draw from this that I'm a welcome speaker. But the first thing I would like to do is to, of course, really thank BEREC for the invitation, thank Anne-Marie, Costas, all the BEREC members for this initiative, because I find it very important that BEREC engages with stakeholders. But also thank BEREC and the telecom operators, which are represented in the room, for their engagement in this very difficult situation resulting from the invasion of Ukraine. We have seen what it means in terms of the tragedy that we are seeing, and the commitment of telecom operators, of BEREC, to alleviate, to keep networks running, to alleviate many people suffering, at least to have the possibility to be connected with the loved ones. It's really, really appreciated. And we will really continue this effort together to help the people of Ukraine, and whatever you can do, it will be highly, highly appreciated by everyone. Today, I'm going to take you a little bit on a helicopter view of digital policies in Europe. So not just, about communication, telecommunication, and communication services. There will be plenty of discussion during the forum. I heard the question and answer already, many questions also in details. But I like to now a little bit invite you to be on board with me of this plane that flies above Europe and sees what is going to happen in the next 10 years. Of course, the first thing I must say is that we used to say, and we used to start every speech in the last 2 years, the pandemic has changed everything. And we thought that this was a kind of unprecedented and unplanned event that changed our lives. And now we have another one. So just to say that we have in front of us a future that needs to be carefully evaluated on what are the alternative futures, what are the things to happen. And in any case, it always comes to the point that when it comes to our future, very much depends on our digital future, very much depends on a society which builds on connectivity, on exchange of data, and data for good, for keeping our citizens safer, to have the possibility to be free when we express what we want to say, and respect human being. And in this, of course, also have a greener and a society that is prosperous. It's important to repeat this also in these difficult times, because these difficult times should not obfuscate what is the objective of this path that we have set to be a 10-year path. Now we are already at the second year of this path that should land Europe in a place which we think is better than when we started, better in many respects. And of course, the acceleration of the COVID, it's really a decisive factor. So the digital policy program is the consequence, in a way, of what we've seen in the pandemic. And it's also a unique feature which you don't find in previous policy program about digital, the digital agenda, and then the digital single market. The digital decade, it's completely different, and there's one essential element that makes it different. That this time Europe walks the talk, because we are talking about an investment in digital from the public side, which is unprecedented. Digital programs in the recovery plan amount at nearly 30% of the spending in the program. which is really a very significant amount, unprecedented, as I said before, amount of public spending in digital programs. So that makes, I mean, all what we say, committing to a digital policy program, very real and very concrete. Because when you sum to this also national investment, European funding that comes from the European budget, private investment, then we talk of an investment which exceeds trillions of euros, which of course is very much needed, because we need to grow our digital society in many different respects. And that's the other element which is very important of the digital policy program. That's why I invited you to take an helicopter view of the digital policies, which is we like to really cover the 4 quadrants that we think the society and the economy need in terms of digital advancement. We like to have better skilled population, so basic digital skills, but also specialists. And more than ever, we need specialists a bit everywhere in artificial intelligence, in cybersecurity, in networks, and data specialists. Not only, I mean, engineers, we need also doctors that can use big data and artificial intelligence. So this transformational need of the workforce, it's a priority, and it's one of the fundamental elements of the policy program. We need better infrastructure. And for us, there was no willingness to micromanage this point. I mean, we could have imagined, I mean, as in the past, very sophisticated targets. We prefer to have a clear-cut target. That for us, it's 100% of coverage of 5G to offer all citizens the possibility to use 5G or more, I mean, if possible, and fiber or the equivalent of fiber everywhere. No more, no less. And this to be absolutely clear-cut on what is the objective. I mean, because of course this objective has many consequences in the way we accept milestones and targets in the recovery programs of the member states, in the way we modernize our state aid, and in the way we want to lend Europe in terms of a modern and interconnected infrastructure. The other element is to invest in the computing continuum. Computing continuum starts from the fact that bits need to be transported, so telecom networks, but then more and more with the software-defined network, you cannot distinguish it. Then you enter into the cloud, and then you enter into the processing. That's for us the continuum, and we want to invest in very advanced processing. We want to invest in very advanced factories to process the most advanced microchips of the world, as our Chip Act that has been announced 4 weeks ago. We want to make sure that Europe is on the forefront on edge computing and cloud. So that's for us, I mean, the technical infrastructure, connectivity has to be there. And then the businesses have to transform. They have to transform to become more savvy in using digital when they already use digital, or when it's the traditional SMEs, they need to start using, I mean, digital tools. And then, last but not least, healthcare, public administration, this needs also to be digitized. It's probably one of the most important elements of the recovery programs in every member state. We have seen what it means during the pandemic to have a digital COVID certificate that kept us moving, kept businesses open. So it was a fundamental digital tool to keep our society going. So if someone wanted the proof of how digital impacts everything else, you have the proof in your pocket. This is the objective. So deliberately, we have chosen very simple targets that can be understood, and targets that frankly can be attained as well. And also we have devoted a significant amount of money, public money, European money, member states money to arrive there, which hopefully will attract investment. And it's already the case. You know that after the announcement of the CHIP Act, a global player immediately announced the important investments in Europe. So I think it's also working, I mean, the way we would like to see things. The policy program has another characteristic, which is the political responsibility for the program. In the past, the digital decade was a program monitored by the Commission, a bit the same, the digital single market. Now we move with the digital policy program into shared responsibility with the member states. So we want, of course, to continue measuring the progress through our DAISY index, to which BEREC contributes, and we are very grateful for this, into monitoring these high-level objectives into national trajectories, so how each member state will get there, and taking the responsibility, the political responsibility to get there. And also we want that there's a collective mechanism to actually assess the deviation from the trajectories that each member state will have set, because of course one size fits all doesn't work, because there are member states a bit more advanced, take connectivity, and some less advanced, so the trajectory is different. So that is set by the member states. But then if a member state deviates from what has been a kind of self-imposed trajectory, I mean, something promised to the citizens, first of all, then, I mean, collectively there will be a mechanism of intervention by which, by a recommendation, the member state would be asked to take measures in order to be in line with the program. The program, of course, it's more of a collective political commitment than a kind of regulatory commitment if you compare it with normal regulatory tools. But it's a very, very important step into collective responsibility vis-à-vis our society as citizens. Too many times in the past, politicians have promised to do things in digital. And then, I mean, maybe there were other elected politicians and then others, and things have not been done. Now we have a kind of track for 10 years, and the record stays in terms of the promises, where we are getting, and the objectives. Also, some of these objectives can only be attained if we work together. And these are the so-called multi-country projects. Like, I mean, I heard before someone mentioning the corridors, I mean, the 5G interconnected corridors. Those projects, they need a specific governance. I mean, they need the member states, the companies to invest together, and also to take, I mean, the leadership and, of course, the responsibility for it. That's why we have proposed with this policy program a special construction, which is called the EDIC, which is a consortia to realize a digital infrastructure. Take, for instance, as an example, the public blockchain to run public services on the blockchain. Of course, if you want public services to be certified and to work on the blockchain should be a public infrastructure. And that can be done through a multi-country project with a governance that can rest on the EDIC. And then to conclude, all of this should have a kind of a tipping point, which is what we want to be as Europeans, as citizens, when we look at digital, which are the digital principles. Even more today, even more when we see this tragedy, when we see, I mean, the values of democracy, I mean, really being attacked. In this case, it's even more important that we reaffirm that all what we do has a very intricate and technical nature, has a complexity in terms of policy and politics, but it really leads to the European vision of what we do, which is a human-centered vision where, I mean, citizens are at the center of this project and their freedom of choice must be respected. Even more vibrantly and in a very forceful way, we need to affirm those principles. That's why we made this proposal. We maintain this proposal as a very high priority, which will be then the governing principle of all the digital decade. And by the way, one of those principles is, of course, the safety of the citizens must be guaranteed, the digital safety of the citizen. Many thanks for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Roberto. Now, it's time for your question to Roberto. Who wants to start? While you think of a question, I don't see any. We have got only a few minutes, so if you wait too much, don't. I would like to give the floor to other people, you know. Perhaps a question, Roberto, which I'd like to ask is, the first time I heard about digital autonomy is when you came to speak to us for the 10th anniversary of BEREC in Riga. And you said something like, we've got to produce more of semiconductors. And I couldn't believe it. You know, I said like, are you sure? And of course, now we see in the Digital Decade program, you know, objectives, clear objectives. And perhaps I wanted to ask you, what are the fields where you think Europe is doing fine in this goal of achieving greater autonomy? And what are the fields where perhaps you believe we should do more?
Thank you very much. I don't want to pass for the grumpy old man that comes and says, I said it. I mean, but I said it. I mean, I said it before the pandemic, and I said it in a festive moment. At that time, the word digital autonomy was seen as a kind of a very bad expression, or an expression about protectionism. Now, unfortunately, after the pandemic and after what we are seeing happening these days, it's a reality we have to face. I mean, it's a reality that if we don't help ourselves, nobody will help us. And when I say ourselves, it's not only Europe, but Europe and the like-minded countries. So in microelectronics, in raw materials, in security matters, we need to be the masters of the game. And this we owe to our citizens, I mean, and we owe to our industries. And of course, I mean, open and absolutely fine to work with like-minded partners that think alike, but also very determined and not to be dependent from others that don't think like us, that democracy is the most important value for a society. We have very practical problem these days. I mean, when I look at many of the supply chains which are disrupted twice because of COVID, because of the war, we are facing problems we thought they were not in the radar screen of Europe, and they are. So when you ask me what is next, I think I have only one answer, which is we have to quickly step up when it comes to our capacity to protect our critical infrastructure, how to work together, how to make sure that the whole ecosystem, digital ecosystem in Europe is more resilient and more robust.
Thank you, Roberto. Please, I know Roberto is a bit intimidating, but he's only there by video, so you shouldn't. Take your chance. Okay, Brigitte. If you, oh no, sorry, there are Aurélie. There are more hands there. Okay, and yes, so, sorry, Aurélie, you spoke, so the gentleman there. I'm giving the floor to people who haven't asked any question yet. Sorry, thank you for all of a sudden many hands. Thank you.
Thanks. Dean Bubley, I'm an independent analyst and advisor. A question, on the autonomy side, reference to semiconductors and things like cloud and edge, that's great, but how do you convince device creators and software developers to use those platforms rather than alternatives?
Thanks for the question. I don't think we are in the business of convincing people. I mean, they do whatever they like. That's really the rule in an open and interconnected society. When it comes to chips, I mean, our objectives are very clear. 20% of the production 2030 should be in Europe, and this of the most advanced chips. And we want open architecture for those chips. So that means all of the creators, all of the startups that would like to do on-chip architecture or develop some ideas, they will have their bonanza. They can come and do whatever they like. The same for cloud. Our mantra in cloud is open cloud system, open middleware, where you have multiple vendors, multiple possibilities to offer your product services. So throughout what I called, again, the computing continuum, our really objective is diversity of supply, more than one supplier, no gatekeeping. That is the way we see, Europe thriving in this computing continuum. And the more we have ingenious mind, the more they are welcome in Europe. By the way, one part of the CHIP Act is dedicated to a new CHIP fund for startups and entrepreneurs. So I hope that this openness will bear fruits.
Thank you, Roberto. Aurélie, do you want? Can we have a mic there and then? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Roberto. Aurélie Doutrio from Orange. I have a question regarding, without surprise, private investment. When we look at the digital decade, we saw ambitious objective, gigabit and 5G for all. We see also, as you were saying, new cooperation or partnership between member state and commission. But to achieve them, we will need private investment into networks. And there we see in the digital principle draft declaration an interesting statement according to which all market actors should contribute to the infrastructure. So my question would be the following: how to ensure that all big data emitters contribute fairly to the cost of usage of network, and how the Commission intend to make the draft principle of the digital principle declaration a concrete realization. Thank you.
Roberto? I think your question seemed to have Roberto looks flabbergasted. Well, I think. Look, thank you for your attempt. I think, look, we've got a couple minutes left with Roberto. I suggest that, okay, he's back. Sorry, Roberto is back. Aurélie, can you just, I'm not sure. Roberto, welcome back. Can you hear us? Roberto, can you hear us? Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us? Roberto, can you hear us?
Now,
no?
yes.
Yes, wonderful. Did you hear Aurélie's question?
Half of it, but the other half I can guess.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Go for it then. Go. You know what's coming. Thank you, Aurélie.
So,
the question
Aurélie
that
was
nobody.
Asking
Go ahead.
If I understand about the need of private investment and how private investment should be valued to realize the digital objective, the digital decade objective, is it correct?
Yeah. Can you just hang on? Yeah. Just recap quickly, Aurélie, and then.
Sorry. As a sum up, yes, indeed, my question was when looking at the digital principle draft declaration, where there is a sentence according to which all market actors should contribute to infrastructure, I was wondering how Commission intend, what will be the next step forward for the Commission, how to make it achieved.
The fair share, the issue of the fair share.
The famous fair share. So. Yeah. When drafting this particular sentence, we knew that this was an important point for the telecom sector, and we believe let's see what will be the final declaration. That was a proposal from the Commission. I think this sentence applies throughout, not just about connectivity, applies throughout the value chain, and this is what we want to do with the Digital Market Act, by the way. And with the fair taxation, fair, remuneration of voters, whatever is the participation to the society of digital actors. As it happens in the real world, the more you are big, the more you have responsibility. The same applies to the digital world. That's the underlying principle. On connectivity, clearly, I mean, there should be a fair balance, I mean, between those investing in networks and those profiting from enhanced investment. What is the fair balance? Of course, one would say, yeah, I mean, those investing in networks get the reward by having access fees, and those investing in content, they get the reward through the streaming fees or other fees. So this is the fair balance. So the question I think you are posing is this balance fair enough? It's a complex question that we are not shying away. And what is the first step? Of course, is first of all to understand from market participants how things are structured and what can be done if there's an imbalance. So the first step is clearly to understand, first of all, to understand what is going on, to guarantee, in any case, a fair remuneration of investment in the network. I mean, this should be guaranteed and independently of what is the content going on the network. And this is because we believe in the neutrality as a principle of the digital decade that is also in the principle and is there to stay. So in this respect, when looking at investors in the network, we have to have a lot of respect for this investment, because they are essential to keep our democratic life going. Gone are the times where the objective of a regulator was to open up network from monopoly. This is a different world. This is a world that should reward those taking the risk to invest in networks. That will be very clear also in our upcoming access recommendation, that for us, investment in network needs to be rewarded. And this is one of the elements that makes the fair balance. The other one, of course, we have to see if there are particular actors arbitrating on this, and arbitrage is never a good thing. So, and on this, we want to collect as many evidences as possible.
Thank you, Roberto. I'm sure we'll have the opportunity to come back to this issue many times in 2023. Thank you very much, Roberto. Please join me in thanking him. And thank you for your question.